The day of the will reading, I walked into the lawyer's office expecting grief, maybe a little awkward silence, and hopefully some kind of closure. What I didn't expect was to be erased. We sat around a polished oak table, the kind that looked like it belonged in a museum or a rich uncle's parlor. My brother Evan, who hadn't spent more than 3 full days with Mom in the last 5 years, sat across from me, arms folded like he was just waiting to be crowned king. The lawyer, an older man with sharp glasses and a neutral tone, began reading from the document like it was gospel. To my beloved son, Evan Whitaker, I leave the house, the full contents of my savings account, and all sentimental and personal belongings. That was it. That was the whole thing. No mention of me. Not even a line that said, "To my daughter Claire, I leave my love." Nothing. I blinked, thinking I must have misunderstood, that there was more, that maybe the lawyer had mixed up the order and my part was coming next. But then I saw it, that smug little smile on Evan's face, a twitch at the corner of his mouth that told me he knew. He had known this was coming. I felt a lump build in my throat, but I swallowed it down. No tears, not here, not in front of him. For 7 years, I had been our mother's caregiver. I had given up my apartment, scaled back my business, canceled vacations, missed birthdays and weddings, all to make sure Mom had everything she needed. I was the one who changed her when she couldn't use the bathroom. I was the one who sat beside her bed during long nights when she couldn't sleep. I was the one who held her hand through every test, every procedure, every moment of confusion and pain. Evan? He called on birthdays, sent flowers on Mother's Day, flew in twice a year to take Mom to brunch and post pictures online like he was the world's greatest son. And still, she gave everything to him. I didn't scream. I didn't throw a fit. But in that quiet moment, something inside me hardened. I had given my mother everything, and now I had nothing except the truth. And I wasn't done yet. My name is Claire Whitaker. I'm 38 years old, and for 7 years, I was the daughter who stayed. When Mom had her first minor stroke, I didn't hesitate. I packed up my apartment in Chicago, moved back to our hometown, and told myself it would just be for a little while. Until she's stable, I said, just until she's walking again, cooking for herself again. But a little while stretched into months, and months turned into years. At the beginning, it wasn't terrible. Mom could still move around with assistance, and her mind was mostly intact. She needed help with groceries, cooking, rides to doctor appointments. I picked up freelance graphic design work, logos, websites, brochures, working late into the night after she'd gone to bed. She wasn't always easy. Mom could be demanding even on her best days, but after her stroke she got sharp. Everything became a battle. The wrong meal, the wrong shampoo, the wrong tone in my voice. Some days I had to remind myself that her mind was shifting, that it wasn't her fault. Other days I just had to bite my tongue and breathe. Evan, my older brother, didn't offer much. He lived in Denver, 2 states away, with his picture-perfect family and his pharmaceutical sales job. Always too busy to fly in. Always promising he'd try to visit next quarter. He called once every few weeks, and when he did show up, it was all surface-level charm. He'd bring a bottle of expensive wine, pose for a few photos with Mom, and post them with captions like, "Quality time with my favorite lady." It drove me crazy, but I let it go. I kept hoping Mom would see the difference, that she'd understand what real love looked like, the kind that gets up at 3 a.m. because the oxygen machine is making a weird noise, the kind that remembers 6 prescriptions, 4 doctor appointments, and an exact soft food diet, the kind that doesn't get posted online because there's no time for a selfie when someone needs to be cleaned up after an accident. When the diabetes got worse, I managed her blood sugar. When her legs began to swell, I massaged them with warm towels. When her memory started slipping, I wrote notes and taped them to every surface in the house. Labels for cabinets, reminders to take her meds, signs in the bathroom with instructions. She told me I was her rock. She told me she didn't know what she'd do without me. So I stayed. I turned down a full-time contract with a creative agency in New York. I stopped dating, stopped traveling, stopped making long-term plans. I told myself it was temporary, that one day when she was gone, I'd get my life back. I thought she saw that. I thought she appreciated it. There were glimpses, moments when she'd squeeze my hand and say, "I know this isn't fair to you." Once she even said, "I'll make it up to you one day, I promise." I believed her. Evan's visits, rare as they were, always left a mess. He'd show up unannounced, take Mom out for lunch even if she wasn't feeling up to it, feed her things she shouldn't be eating. I'd spend days after each visit undoing what he'd done, managing her blood sugar spikes, resetting her routines. But I didn't complain. I thought, let him have his moments. I have the day-to-day. As her health declined, she grew more dependent. She stopped walking altogether, needed help dressing, bathing, feeding. I hired a part-time nurse with the little money she had saved, but the majority of care still fell on me. I never asked Evan for help. I knew what he'd say, that he had kids, a job, responsibilities. As if I didn't. I kept the house running, paid the bills, maintained the garden she used to love, cooked her favorite meals, even when she barely touched them. I had memorized every part of her life by then, her medications, her moods, her fears. I knew her better than anyone. So when she got sick again, her second stroke, I thought we were in this together. I was there at the hospital. I was the one who held her hand during the MRIs. I was the one who argued with the doctors about her care plan. Evan showed up late, stayed for 48 hours, and left with a promise to look into better insurance options. I didn't know at the time that he'd also taken her to meet a lawyer. 2 weeks after Mom came home from the hospital, things started to shift, and not in a way I could explain at first. She was more distracted, harder to pin down. She spent more time on the phone, whispering into it when she thought I wasn't around. Once I walked into the living room and she jumped, shoving the handset under the blanket on her lap like she was a teenager hiding contraband. It didn't take long to guess who she was talking to. Evan's name started coming up more and more. Evan says I should get more sunlight. Evan thinks the house could use some updates. Evan says you work too hard. He's worried about you. Evan says. Evan thinks. Evan wants. It was like he was haunting the house without ever setting foot in it. I asked her directly once, "Has Evan said something to you? About your care? About me?" Her lips pressed together and she looked away. "He's just trying to help," she mumbled. But I could feel it, the slow erosion of everything I had built, everything I had sacrificed. He was rewriting the story, turning himself into the concerned son while I became the exhausted, overbearing one, and she was starting to believe it. One afternoon, I came back from the pharmacy to find her talking to someone in the driveway, a man in a blazer, holding a clipboard. They turned as I pulled up, both startled. "Who was that?" I asked as I helped her inside. "Just someone Evan sent," she said quickly. "He's helping me review some things, legal things." My stomach twisted. "Legal things?" She waved a hand like it was nothing. "Just paperwork. Don't worry about it." But I did worry. That night, after she went to bed, I dug through the stack of mail on the counter and found a business card shoved behind an envelope. Jeffrey Alden, Elder Law and Estate Planning. A new name, not the family lawyer we'd used when Dad died. Not someone I had ever spoken to. I knew something was wrong then. I just didn't know how bad it would get. 2 weeks later, she had another health scare, a shortness of breath episode that led to a 2-night hospital stay. I was there for all of it. Evan didn't fly in, but when she returned home, she was colder, distant, like she was suspicious of me. When I tried to help her with her medication, she said, "I can do it. I'm not helpless, you know." It stung, especially after years of doing everything for her without complaint. That same week, she started insisting on going through her jewelry boxes, packing them into neat little velvet-lined containers. When I asked what she was doing, she said flatly, "Just organizing things. Evan said I should think about where everything goes. While I still can." I froze. "What does that mean?" "It means," she said, sharper than I'd ever heard her, "that I need to take care of my affairs before it's too late." She wouldn't look me in the eye. A few days later, I noticed one of the framed photos on the living room bookshelf was missing, the one of the two of us, taken on her birthday years ago, both of us smiling, her holding a bouquet of yellow tulips. In its place was a newer photo, her and Evan, sitting on the porch from his last visit. I hadn't even known he took one. By then, I was beyond hurt. I was angry. But more than that, I was scared. Something was happening behind my back, and I didn't know how to stop it. The final blow came when I found the copy of the updated will. She'd left it out by accident, tucked between a stack of medical bills. My name wasn't even on the first page. I flipped through it, my hands trembling. "To my beloved son, Evan Whitaker, I leave my house, my savings, and all items of personal significance." There was no mention of me, not even a thank you. That night, I sat on the porch in the dark, staring at the sky, feeling like a ghost in my own life. I had given her everything, and she was about to give it all to someone who had given her nothing. I didn't confront her. I didn't scream or cry or demand an explanation. I knew better by then. Mom had already made her decision. She may have been confused, manipulated, or just tired. But whatever the reason, the will was real. The betrayal was real. But I wasn't about to go down without leaving a mark. I had spent years living in that house. I wasn't just a caregiver. I had been her nurse, her chauffeur, her errand runner, her counselor, her everything. I had walked away from a thriving freelance business, delayed friendships, put dating and personal dreams on hold, because I thought being a good daughter mattered, and if she wasn't going to acknowledge that, then the courts would. That night, I called Julia, an attorney friend from college who specialized in estate disputes. I hadn't spoken to her in years, but when she heard what had happened, her voice went steel cold. "Do you have records?" she asked. I did. I had kept everything, not even realizing I was building a case all along. Doctor's appointment logs, pharmacy receipts in my name, grocery lists, bank transfers, security camera footage from our porch showing me coming and going for years, email chains with her physical therapist, photos of my setup in the guest room that had become mine because I had never moved back out. I gave up my life to take care of my mother, and in legal terms, that made me a dependent caregiver. "I think we have something," Julia said, "especially if we can prove duress or mental impairment during the time she revised the will." Duress, impairment. Words I hadn't wanted to think about. But the truth was, her cognitive decline had been slow, hard to detect, until you looked close. And in the last year, it had accelerated. And Evan? He'd known exactly when to strike. So we started building. While Evan was busy calling contractors to fix up the house and telling his Facebook friends about how hard it's been losing Mom, I was meeting with legal mediators and hiring a forensic document analyst. I needed someone to verify whether Mom had even been in a fit state to understand what she was signing. The analyst's report came back 1 month later. Her signature on the will was shakier than usual. She'd made a few small errors on the form, misspelling a middle name, putting the wrong birth year for herself. Nothing major, but enough to raise questions about capacity. Combined with the fact that Evan had arranged the whole meeting privately, without my knowledge or the original family attorney present, and without a medical power of attorney, it started to smell rotten. Then Julia did something brilliant. She had me file a formal petition for caregiver compensation. It's a legal move, sometimes used in elder care cases. It allowed us to place a claim on the estate, regardless of what the will said. "I don't want the house," I told her. "I just want what's fair." "Then let's go after that," she replied. Next, we tracked down witnesses. The physical therapist wrote a letter saying I was the only consistent caregiver for years. Her primary doctor confirmed I was the one who managed medication, appointments, and aftercare instructions. Even our neighbor, Mrs. Taylor, who baked cookies every Sunday and watched Mom's decline with quiet sadness, agreed to submit a statement. "She would have been lost without Claire," she wrote. "Evan was barely ever here. Claire gave up her whole life. We filed everything, every document, every affidavit, every photo of me helping her into the car or shoveling the walk while she watched from the porch. Then came the best part. I requested a hearing. That meant Evan couldn't just quietly enjoy his inheritance. He would have to stand in front of a judge and explain how the woman he barely saw somehow decided, in her final months, to give him everything and me nothing. When he got the notice in the mail, he called me for the first time in over a year. 'Claire, this is ridiculous. Mom made her choice.' I didn't raise my voice. 'Then you shouldn't be worried, right?' He was silent for a few beats. Then he said something that almost made me laugh. 'This isn't what she would have wanted.' That's when I knew I had him, because what she wanted had never included any of this." The courtroom was quiet, save for the ticking of the old clock mounted above the judge's bench. Evan sat across from me, dressed like he was attending a brunch, not a legal hearing that might unravel his shiny new inheritance. He looked bored, tapping his fingers against the polished wood of the table, as if this was all a minor inconvenience. But I wasn't bored. I was wide awake, alive with a kind of steel-boned calm I hadn't felt in years. My lawyer, Julia, stood and began the case. She spoke with poise, laying out the timeline of my care. How I had lived with my mother for over 7 years, managing her daily needs, and how Evan, my brother, had been mostly absent. She introduced the supporting documents, photos of me and Mom together in the living room, dated and time-stamped, care logs, grocery receipts, appointment confirmations, emails, prescriptions in my name, letters from neighbors, doctors, and our mother's physical therapist. Then came the bombshell. Julia handed the judge the recording. It was a voice memo I'd taken 2 weeks before Mom passed. I hadn't thought much of it at the time. I was reading her favorite poem, When You Are Old, by Yeats, when she suddenly said something that stuck with me. On the recording, Mom's voice was tired but unmistakable. "You know, Claire, you've done everything for me. I don't know what I'd do without you. Evan's got his own life, but you gave up yours. Don't let anyone say you didn't matter." Julia paused as the recording ended. Then she let the silence linger, heavy in the courtroom. Evan shifted uncomfortably. The judge leaned forward. "Mr. Whitaker," she said, addressing my brother, "why did you not disclose that your mother had previously made my office her attorney of record?" Evan blinked. I didn't know." "You arranged for a new attorney to help draft the revised will. Yet your mother had an ongoing legal relationship with a different firm. That raises concerns." "She wanted me to handle it," he mumbled. Julia stood again. Your Honor, we're not arguing that Ms. Whitaker didn't sign the will. We're questioning the circumstances, her cognitive decline, the lack of witnesses familiar with her mental state, and the complete exclusion of the primary caregiver who was living with her day and night. It all points to undue influence, or at the very least, questionable intent. Evan's attorney objected, but the judge held up a hand. Sit down, Mr. Kellerman. I've seen enough. She turned to Evan. I have reason to believe this will does not reflect your mother's true intent, she said plainly. There's a substantial body of evidence suggesting that Ms. Claire Whitaker acted in the capacity of caregiver and therefore is entitled, at the very least, to compensation from the estate. Evan's face drained of color. But this is my house. The judge raised an eyebrow. Not today, it's not. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just sat there, breathing, feeling the first gusts of something I hadn't felt in years. Justice. In the weeks following the hearing, everything shifted. Evan stopped responding to messages from my lawyer. He skipped one mediation appointment altogether, which only hurt his case. His attorney, Kellerman, called mine in a panic afterward, trying to negotiate quietly to avoid a full trial. Julia didn't flinch. She'd seen men like Evan crumble before. Charm was a poor substitute for documentation, and I had years of it. Eventually, a settlement was reached. It wasn't perfect, but it was fair. The estate would be divided. Evan kept the house. Fine by me. I had spent years inside those walls sacrificing my sanity and health. I didn't want to live in that museum of disappointment and resentment anyway. Let him deal with the old plumbing, the cracked foundation Mom had refused to fix, and the property taxes she never paid on time. But the financial assets, nearly $240,000 in savings, CDs, and retirement funds, were split 60-40 in my favor. Why? Because the court recognized me as Mom's primary caregiver. There was no ignoring the physical toll I had borne. The case file included letters from 2 doctors who confirmed that I had not only provided care, but had also suffered health complications of my own due to stress and sleep deprivation. There was a name for what I had done: informal caregiving. And finally, the law acknowledged it. More importantly, the heirlooms, my grandmother's pearl necklace, the vintage photo albums, and my mom's old recipe box, all came to me. Those were the things that mattered, not because of their monetary value, but because they carried meaning. My brother wouldn't know what to do with those things anyway. He didn't even know the story behind the worn corner of the family quilt Mom kept in her chest. I moved out a week after the ruling. I'd already packed my few belongings and stored them at a friend's place. I left behind the adjustable hospital bed in the living room, the pill organizer on the kitchen table, and the plastic tub of Ensure shakes in the fridge. All of it was Evan's now. When I walked out the door for the last time, I didn't cry. I didn't look back. Instead, I drove across town to a small condo I'd signed the lease for earlier that day. Nothing fancy, 2 bedrooms, a balcony, a quiet neighborhood, but it was mine, entirely mine. I unpacked in silence that night. No calls from doctors, no alarms reminding me about blood pressure meds, no footsteps from upstairs shaking me awake when Mom wandered at 3 a.m., just quiet and peace. A few days later, Julia sent me the final documents: settlement papers, a letter from the judge formally recognizing me as a key caregiver in the estate file, and a list of all items awarded to me. I read it once, then filed it away. Closure didn't come in a single moment. It came in pieces, like when I finally slept through the night, or when I bought myself a brand new set of pots and pans, not inherited, not hand-me-downs. Just mine. Evan? I haven't heard from him since the court date. Word has it he's already trying to sell the house, complaining about the maintenance costs. Good luck to him. I didn't win everything. But I reclaimed my time. my energy, my dignity, and that was worth more than any inheritance. It's been 9 months since I walked out of that house for the last time, and life has started to feel like my own again. My mornings are quiet. No pills to crush into applesauce. No early alarms for doctor's appointments. Just me, a cup of strong coffee, and sunlight filtering through the blinds of my condo. Some days, I still wake up expecting to hear the soft shuffle of Mom's walker or her voice calling my name. But when the silence settles, I remember. Those days are gone. And I'm okay with that. Grief is strange. It's not always tears and aching hearts. Sometimes it's just the absence of obligation, the space where exhaustion used to live. That empty space can feel liberating. Or lonely. There are days when I miss her. Not the bitter, declining version of her I cared for in those final years, but the woman who used to hum along to the radio while baking. The one who held my hand at my high school graduation and whispered, "You'll do great things." That version of my mother is the one I choose to remember. I visit her grave once a month. I don't bring flowers. She never liked them. Said they made her think of funerals. Instead, I bring the crossword puzzle she never finished, or a cup of her favorite mint tea, and I sit beside the headstone and talk. Not for her. For me. I tell her about the online course I signed up for, something in interior design. I'm working again, slowly. A few freelance clients here and there. For the first time in years, I create for joy, not in between caregiving tasks. I tell her that I bought new curtains, that I rearranged the living room again, that I started going on long evening walks just because. And I tell her that I forgave her, not for Evan, not for the will, but for being human, for being flawed, for not seeing me clearly when I needed her to. I'll never know if she regretted what she did, if Andrew manipulated her, if she thought she was doing what was best. But I've made peace with never having those answers. As for Evan, we haven't spoken since the court-ordered settlement. I see him pop up occasionally in old family group texts I've long since muted. I think he assumed he'd walk away with everything and a clean conscience. What he got instead was a house filled with ghosts and broken pipes, a symbol of a legacy he didn't earn. I don't envy him, not anymore. I learned that being the one who stays, the one who gives, doesn't mean you have to sacrifice your self-worth. I gave Mom everything I had while she was alive, and in the end, she chose someone else. But I chose myself, and now, every step forward is mine to take. There's a bookshelf in my living room filled with things that matter to me. Photos, cookbooks, a piece of driftwood from a vacation I took 10 years ago. Nestled between the frames is a simple silver picture of Mom and me from before everything fell apart, when she still looked at me with pride. I keep it there as a reminder, not of what I lost, but of what I survived. And every time I glance at it, I don't feel bitterness anymore. I feel free.